world of e-commerce can be tricky, and that's why you need the experts to help take you to the next level. This is Delivering E-commerce, and this is Chris Parsons.
Hey, welcome to Delivering E-commerce. I'm your host, Chris Parsons, and I'm excited to be live for the first time on LinkedIn. And I'm most excited about being live with Isaac Wanzam, a great partner of mine in the industry for many, many years. And I'm looking forward to this. I'm checking out LinkedIn on the side here, Isaac, to see how it actually shows up live. So far, no indication to me, but this should be exciting.
No, awesome, Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I know that when you started this podcast a while ago, I'm like, I gotta do this show with you. I want to congratulate you. Already 10 episodes in a few short weeks. Some really great, guests so far. Congratulations.
Thank you, Isaac. And actually, I just been changing messages, so I was going to save this, but actually, you know what? I'll bring it up today because I had confirmation from somebody in the industry that I never thought would say yes. So if this doesn't happen, I'm jinxing myself. But Mitch Joel will be joining me on an interview, and he's the author of 6 Pixels of Separation, Control of Delete, and so forth. So I'm excited to be able to interview Mitch over the next few weeks. But most importantly, I'm just so honored to have you here with me. You've taught me a lot in the industry. We've partnered together at a number of different companies, and I'm always learning from you and your team. I find that the group is just so responsive, respectful, and that's the win-win relationship that you always look for as a retailer with an agency partner. So Isaac, let's get in first. Before we talk about Geekspeak, let's talk about you. I want to know your journey. I want to know what was brought you and led you to where you are today.
Sure. Yeah, fantastic. And it's been certainly an interesting journey. I'm originally from Uganda. I came to Canada in 1984, out thereabouts. So I really jumped in, went to school here, and eventually ended up at Ryerson. I thought I was going to be a land use planner, believe it or not. That was my the journey so far from that perspective. And then I ended up in communications. My journey led me to working with a lot of large corporations on that side. I think the first big gig was probably at Bell Canada. I was part of the corporate communications team there, really helping manage government affairs and talking to consumers around some of the directions and policies, obviously, that affected Bell Canada as a large telecom, and of course their customers as well. That led me into the world of advertising and specifically ad agencies, also in comm, managing projects, of course, working with a lot of enterprise level customers. As the internet became a thing, this whole world of digital, and that would have been like, I'm aging myself here, but 98, 99, a lot of that began to be more and more important in terms of how the world was going to change. At that time, there was still no e-commerce yet, which is where I am right now. But you could see that the way that people receive information, the way that companies serve their customers, was really going to be really impacted and affected by how digital was evolving. So early on there, I did my time with I was at Neuron. I did some work with McLaren McCann as a client, and then eventually it just made sense to say, you know what, I really want to stake my opportunity here as an entrepreneur. So I set up Geekspeak in 2003, really working as a content developer for agencies. From there, the team expanded. We brought more people on. Then about 6, 7, or 10 years after that, we really saw the pivot into e-com. This is where people actually started buying things online. And being on the agency side, you saw that there was this gap where agencies, you could do a lot of large campaigns and do really great creative. But when it came to actually producing content that would drive e-com sales, nobody wanted to touch it. Nobody wanted to create product descriptions for 50,000 SKUs or screwdrivers or whatever it is. But we saw an opportunity as really somewhere to really stake our ground. And that's really where it started. We shaped our services, we grew, and we really proved ourselves and have done that in the industry, certainly with great customers such as yourself, and a lot of the large companies have trusted us and allowed us to really be part of their growth as e-com has grown. Fast forward a bit here, we got a very, very seasoned team. We kind of fluctuate between 20 to 50 people depending on what we're working on. But it's been exciting. It's a space that's very dynamic. You're not working on the same client. You're not working on the same product. the channel self-evolved, there's new technology. So long answer there, but it's been exciting, but certainly a journey that has been about innovating and pivoting and really seeking as an entrepreneur where the opportunity is.
I love your story, but I love the piece where you said we just decided to open up Geekspeak. Like it wasn't that simple. I'm sure it was like as an entrepreneur, you're figuring out, can I sustain the lifestyle from doing this? What's my revenue? What's my salary needs going to be? Do you want to talk or dive into any of those? Like, how did you really say, you know what? I think this is something here that we're going to be able to make work, and I'm going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was almost like a pivotal moment where I really started working as a content creator, really as a freelancer, where companies would say, I'm launching a brochure, I'm launching my small business, and what small businesses were facing then is no different than they are now. I mean, they'll do what they do and what they're good at, whether it's they're plumbers or they're bakers or doctors or otherwise, or clinicians, but the content and communication is typically where they lack. So very early on, we saw that, okay, if we're able to do enough of these, we have a sustainable service offering. So from that, the team certainly grows, because now it's like, well, we created my content, but now I need it in French. So then Geekspeak brings on a translator. Now, well, I don't want to have to go find somebody to design and leave this thing out. Now we bring on our designers. So we kind of grew that way. And I think a lot of that kind of came from my experience in corporate communications and certainly working for these large agencies. We knew how to set up systems properly. We knew how to manage accounts. We knew how to, sort of build long-term rollouts. So really learning in Toronto and in the ad agencies, and Cossette is somewhere I spent time really seeing that firsthand. Allowed me to build a boutique agency that eventually focused in a very narrow area that we became experts on. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I always worried that, okay, am I going to make enough to pay what I got to do? Absolutely. And I think that never changes. It's funny as your team grows, because not only do you worry about yourself, but you also worry about the people who are very, very good and they're committed to your vision, they're committed to the team, they're committed to their clients. Ultimately, you got to make sure they're okay as well. So, those, thoughts and sort of your considerations never really go away, especially as somebody who's, in a leadership position.
Yeah, and especially as someone that cares about his people, right? Like, it's one thing to be an entrepreneur, start up and just hire some people, having them help you get to the next level. But
Right.
if you're doing it and it's a partnership, and they're there for long-term growth as well as your success, and you start to care, I mean, you tend to lose sleep at times, worrying about not only your own success, but taking care of those people and making sure that them and their families are taken care of. So, and I know that's you have a lot of empathy and care for people. So I can imagine those type of stresses on an entrepreneur, but at the same time, it's got to be motivating, because you have all of this responsibility and accountability for the success of your team. And I think I would love to hear about how you manage that type of thought process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, Chris, you make a very important point there. It is about caring about who you're working with, where they're working, and beyond just the people who are on your team themselves, everybody they're responsible for. So that kind of comes through as part of the culture of the company itself. So you want to make sure that you're managing, because you're not managing a company, you're managing everything else that goes with it. So ultimately, it is a point of balance. It is clients bring in work, you have to manage those budgets properly so work is finished as it should be, and you're essentially delivering on a promise. Because ultimately, the reason we have been around and GS has been around for almost 19 years now is that ability to actually do and deliver on that. And a lot of the team members, they come here, sometimes they'll go and they'll try something else, and ultimately what brings them back is some of that that empathy and care for each other. And it's not just myself, I think it permeates through the leadership overall, and I think that's very, very important. And it is a balance. I mean, it's our job, especially as a leader, to innovate and find out where is business going next, because we want to remain competitive. We want to ensure that we're continuing to produce and give value to customers such as yourself. So we have a job to come to. So that's all part of that of the vision of the management that goes with it. And I think more importantly is getting some great people around you. We have some great managers. Trisha, who you work with, is one of them. Somebody who understands the vision and also has strong organizational and training and coaching to just make everybody better. And everybody, that they walk out here, they walk out with a better resume than they came in with. which is something that's very, very important to me, because we want to make that part of your experience here. And ultimately, that's what grows your company.
Yeah, and I love Trisha. I think she is a brand ambassador for Geekspeak. She is what the culture represents, and she is a professional. She's not afraid to speak up and say, Chris, I don't think you're going down the right path here, which is great, because you don't want agencies that just say yes to every idea that you have. You want agencies to be thoughtful and come in with some insights, some experience, and be able to direct you, as well as deliver on what you're asking, but at the same time, based on their best practices and the fact that they're dealing with so many retailers, be able to speak up and not be afraid to have that back and forth dialogue. And she's a true ambassador of your brand.
No, absolutely. That's a really kind words to say, for sure, and that's something that we definitely want to foster. And I think you made a very important point there. When you work with one retailer, one brand, you kind of almost get caught up in that one space, because that's what you see every day. The benefit we find, and everybody probably attests to this, is that we work with such mid-size, large-size retailers, brands themselves. So a lot of the best practices that you see, as part of this project, whether we're bringing them or we actually learn them from our customers as well, also come to bear on what we do. So when you're working with a large international brand, like New Balance, for example, who we work with, we're seeing what the global picture is in terms of how they're positioning product. When you work with Amazon, you kind of see how they're leading the content space, for example, and the customer experience. And of course, you work with Canadian retailers, the specific elements within that kind of shape that overall. So we're able to bring that right across. So when you reach out to say, what's going on out there? Where's this trend going? It's really benefiting from that we think our customers are.
So let's talk about some of those trends. I mean, you mentioned it in one of your answers there, that you always want to stay on point and stay ahead of the trends. Where's e-commerce and retail and content going right now? And that's three questions in one, by the way.
One. Yeah, it's a good, Chris. I think they're all interrelated, but I think they all come down to the same bottom line: is how are we serving our customers? By customers, we mean the consumers in the end, who are coming to Home Hardware, who are coming to Walmart or Staples or Amazon. How are we providing the best value for them, and where are they shopping? Where they're getting the products and services they need. So ultimately, I think our job is to understand that, and that has evolved, and you've seen that change over the past 15, 20 years, where it was all about desktops, we shaped and produced and delivered on that platform, because that's where all your customers are. And it was very important to ensure that we had things like site speed and optimization and pages that loaded well and cars that made sense. So as that changed to mobile and as it changed to social and so on and so forth, ultimately the path and the objective has remained much the same. Where we are right now is, I think we're seeing a move away from desktop as an example. It's not as prominent as it once was. More and more purchases are obviously being made on mobile. So how are brands and sort of retailers and your partners such as ourselves adopting to that? So e-com is becoming very much mobile, and then even within mobile, what is the framework that it's actually going to exist on? Is it your website, or is it any other platform within that, i.e. social? Where does Instagram fit in for you? Where does Facebook and now TikTok coming on board? How is that affecting? So those are certainly where the trends are going. We're also seeing changes along where who is authentic voice? Who is the trusted voice when it comes to brands speaking to customers? At one point, I was in an agency, I could develop an ad and say, what, our product does this. These are the features, and this is what it's about. That still remains very important. But we're seeing more and more so that the authenticity of peers on this platform is what's driving sales. So influencer marketing and people that are voices that are trusted. So all these trends kind of interrelate and play a certain role in terms of where e-com itself is going, and certainly how it's shaping how product is sold. So I think it's very, very important as folks in the space that we understand that. I would certainly prepare that with the right tools, with the right communication, with the right engagement, and the right metrics in terms of helping products move.
Yeah, I love the point about the being authentic and trustworthy, that type of messaging from a brand perspective. It's not just about putting about A+ content, but you have to be authentic with that information. And I remember going to, I think it was a Canada Post conference a number of years ago, and they brought in some guest speakers and some agencies. And one of the agencies showed and I'm pretty sure it was Crayola. Crayola had this new toy out in the market, and what it did was it created bubbles, and the bubbles were infused with color.
Right.
And we press this gun and all kinds of, but what was happening on this gun, it was leaking all over customers' hands, putting dye on their hands.
Right.
And they still asked an agency to bring this to life in TV and and show this great commercial of kids engaging with this product. And the agency rep said, as much as I love the Crayola brand, until this problem is fixed, we're not putting our name out there representing this. The product was a great idea, but it was defective.
Sure.
And it was this entrepreneur saying he lost the bid, he lost the account because there was a rush to market with this, and because he wanted to make sure his reputation was protected and not go out to market with something that was definitely going to get a lot of negative reviews. He turned down the business. So as you're building that trust and with your own brand, and it's important for retailers, do you have the confidence, and I'm sure you do, so I'm asking probably a stupid question here, but it's one that I think is critical to come across, whereas there needs to be integrity on both parts. And how much do you protect the integrity of your brand versus going after closing an account?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a very, very important question. And I think to me, as a business owner, it really comes down to, am I looking for the short-term gain, or am I looking to build a business that's going to be here for a long time? Whether I'm running or somebody else comes in from a succession plan and does it, what does that really mean? So, I mean, you could always close an account quickly by presenting something that may be inaccurate or whatever the case is, and you may win that specific business opportunity. But what does that do about relationships that you have, 5-10 years from now? Do people walk away and say, what do you think about Geekspeak? Because this space is very, very small, obviously, and Chris, you know that. So, and that comes down to making the right, decisions and the right selection in terms of who you work with. But also, I think being fair to your staff and people who are part of your team, and also your clients as well, billing fairly, being transparent in what they do. And I think it's ultimately what it's all about. I'll tell you a quick story. I remember I was working with a big retailer at one point, and we ended up in a situation where they somehow paid our invoice twice. Right. And because they were so large, we would send it back and they'd say, you guys don't take that. But it was so important that say, you guys made this mistake and this error, and we're correcting it. That really spoke to our integrity as a company. So that things like that are just part of the culture. If a customer is not happy, they want something corrected, we're not going to do a customer wrong just to make that one sale. And I think that permeates for us also as consumers. There's nothing worse than buying something from somebody, or even some of these large companies, you try to take it back and it's like, forget it. It's like, you really ask, why really fight me on this one, purchase here when you know that I'm a lifetime customer?
Right.
So ultimately that's where where we see things. It's a win right now. And that also comes down to, the kind of products, the kind of companies we work with, because we do have our own values internally. So there's certain categories, for example, that we typically won't work in. Like I'll say firearms as an example. We've been approached with large gun retailers, and with all the things that happen around shootings and sort of things of that nature, we question whether we want to help sell more guns.
Right.
As an example. So I think as an agency, and it'll vary from one company to another, and you have your own value system, but there's some things that you just understand that, okay, this doesn't align with our own cultural values as an organization, and those sometimes will vary and change over a period of time. But ultimately, you have the opportunity to make those decisions, and I think they're important.
I agreed. It sounds like you found your why, and you know what I'm talking about with the why. If anyone's ever listened to Simon Sink talk about understanding your why as an individual and as an organization, when you're applying for different jobs, you're going to want to understand your why, because if their culture, if their ethics, if their way they operate don't align with yours, you're not going to have success. And the same with you taking on clients. If they're not following the same why that you have and the same values that you have in place, you'll get that first contract, but there will not be a long-term relationship, because it won't work. It won't fit. It won't feel good. So that's great that you have those morals to stand by and just be very structured with those things. It pays off long term. So let's talk a little bit about Geekspeak and how you engage like with retailers. What's that starting point to really understand the retailer and then come up with solutions that are going to benefit, whether it be on e-commerce or just, hey, you started out and you were working on graphics and pamphlets and stuff like that. So how do you go through that journey with your partners?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, our partners find us a lot of different ways. I mean, the most traditional way is that really somebody would visit, geekspeakcommerce.com, which is our website, and they'll kind of understand a little bit. Sometimes they won't be sure and they'll book a call. And we typically call this the initial strategy call, a consultation call, to understand really where our customers are in their journey. And there's a range. Certainly there's degrees of sophistications where someone may be a large retailer and they've got a large team, and there's just some very specific challenges that they need addressed. In other cases, people who are early on the DTC journey. So we've had somebody may have been a distributor for a long time, but now they really understand that they want to maintain and own that relationship with their customers. So they need some support in that. And then in some cases, it's people who are, or agencies who are clients who are a lot smaller. I'm launching a new product. Here's what I want to get to market. I've got a vision. This is going to be big one day. I need you to help me with my journey. So that initial consultation is really the first part in understanding where the customers are. And then from there is really stepping up and really creating a plan in terms of how do we execute. If somebody has, or a client has, entry objectives, they want to get into the EU market as an example, we'll draw out a plan for that. We'll select countries, we'll talk about an onboarding plan. Certainly if it's a large, we try to improve usability on our website, we'll map out that as well. So once we've kind of got to that point, is really laying out a delivery plan, which is, phase 1, we'll do this, phase 3, phase 4, and so on. So has really been a successful approach. Certainly there's a lot of more granular sort of project execution standpoints that the rest of the team could talk probably a lot more. But ultimately, that's where we kind of start off and end up. We understand the vision where you're trying to be, then very, very specific in terms of how we're going to get there. Measuring and ensuring that we achieve success in terms of what we wanted to do, whether that's in targets around sales or SKUs online or regions that your product is in, are all part of our measures. But certainly very, very important to understand where do we want to go jointly as a team, because I think at that point GS and our clients will really become a melded team that has leadership on our side, so leadership on the client side, and then it's a matter of ongoing execution one by one.
That's great. And I think you touched on something that I think was important, not necessarily for Geekspeak, but just as a best practice for anyone that's listening that wants to get into doing their own business. And one of the things you were talking about is the stuff that you're engaged in. So one of the things I remember distinctly about you, Isaac, was we met at a Rakuten conference, and then we bumped into each other at an e-tail conference, and then we bumped into each other at another event. So while we weren't necessarily engaged in any work at that time, you constantly networked, and you were constantly giving time to me or Tim Mayer, for example, who was on my team. And those are the things that I think represent Geekspeak, represent companies that I have strong affinities for, is that they're engaged. They're in order to provide a retailer with a good solution, you can't just sit in your office and think that you're going to understand the retailer. You have to go to these events and network. And I think there's one event that you are always posting about, a hackathon event. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say that you're absolutely right, because I mean, being part of the innovation is being part of the ecosystem, right? And is listening to conversations like this. I listened to the one that you had with Johnny on the last one. Really amazing. I can't wait to hear more about this leadership literature that is coming out. So those to me and the rest of our team is how we stay current. Is certainly in the past we haven't been able to travel as much, but there's a lot of content still. Certainly that's where it is. Now we are also about bringing communities together around innovation. So about 4 years ago, believe it or not, we started an event, and it's part of our giving back to the community, especially Durham, where we're located. The event is called Hack for Good. So the intent is literally to bring together smart people, give them a specific goal and target, and have them deliver something in 36 hours. So typically what we have done, and this year was virtual, but we'd open up our office, which is really this awesome office, and people would come in like on a Friday afternoon, and nobody's leaving until 36 hours later on the Saturday. So we sleep here, the community participates, the restaurants donate food. We've had a lot of great sponsorship from corporate, Staples, TD, folks of that nature have really sponsored this event in the past. So the theme changes every year because we very much interested about solving the world's problems, which is definitely outside e-com. We started off with Code Green, which was all about addressing environmental changes, environmental issues. So things like climate change and food sustainability. So these teams in pods of 5 came up with some great tech. Last year was AI for Good, which was all around how we are using technology, specifically artificial intelligence, to address world issues, but while considering all the challenges that go within that. So people came up with tools that would predict illnesses and be able to read, all different kind of diagnostic, images and so forth. So that's what that was. Now this year was Body Hack, which was really awesome because it was all about health. So we're in the 4th year, and next year we're going to the 5th year. So for us, and talk about team culture and bringing people together for something that has nothing to do with online buying, that event is amazing. The team really digs in, and it's led and organized by the team member Suzanne Hicks, who's in our team, kind of leads that. But it's fantastic because mayors come in and politicians come in and community comes in, and you kind of have this amazing dynamic energy for like 36. You ever seen people stay up for 36 hours straight? It's really, really cool, and we're hoping to bring it back in person next year for sure. But it's one of our most proud events for sure as an organization.
Yeah, I love it. I want to be there next year. I think I can
absolutely
24 hours. I might fall asleep for the rest, but we'll give it a go. But I do love that innovation about you and how you're bringing community together, and how it's not only about hacking, it's about how you can do good with this event. So good on you. Congratulations on that. I noticed the posts a few weeks ago when it was up there, and I didn't even get a chance to engage with you. I've been so busy trying to pull e-commerce to life that it's been a whirlwind. So let's get back to Geekspeak, and sure. You're partnered with many of the major retailers in the business, and you're constantly working with them. What is the biggest trend right now? Is it still the A+ content that it was a few years ago? Is it now re-looking and making sure the navigation is more consumer friendly? Where do you see it right now? And I'll throw out the term that I hate, but I use it so often, is omni-channel, and how you get those websites and digital experiences really engaged at store level. Where do you see things right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, a very good question, Chris. Yeah, so absolutely, for sure. I think we saw tremendous growth, obviously, with a lot of our retail partners, specifically in the past 12 months, that really caused them to move and invest very, very quickly. As far as content, there's a good number that is still in this place of we need to optimize and have a better content experience for our customers, because when they come online and we finally have spend the ad dollars or wherever it is, we want them to understand what they're buying, and that drives our conversions and sales and so forth. Mm-hmm. So that still remains that. The need for enriched content in the form of A+, I think is amazing. And I think it's an amazing opportunity for sure. Amazon has proven that over and over again. Just tell people, and shoppers what they're getting and how they could use this product. So we do a lot of that for our customers on those platforms, specifically Amazon, and that's definitely the way to go. When it comes to where does omni-channel fall in, and how do these all blend together? I think you've said it yourself in the past. It's just you need to serve your customer. You need to serve your customer where they are and when they're ready for your product. Though, unfortunately, there's a lot of silos still. I think there's going to be less of that as we move forward in 2021 and 2022, because really these teams have had to come to work together to fulfill. Even when stores still alone, stores have in some cases become the fulfillment center for the e-com team. So we're seeing some really good collaboration, which I'm very, very excited about, because I think that's going to break a lot of the walls and have these teams actually work together between the vendor managers and the buyers and the in-store teams, and certainly the e-com teams, which have always kind of been in the background a little bit, but certainly have come up front. Then let's talk about experience. I think that has become pivotal. You and I are in Ontario. Nobody's been able to go to the store, for periods of time, sometimes months. So being able to really shape that experience online, whether it's through navigation and building taxonomy and hierarchies, actually speak to how people navigate through a site, has become critical. Because if I can't walk into a store, but I can buy your product, and really my website is like really one of the only ways I could sell right now, that could become quite detrimental. So all those things kind of work together. We're hoping to see some really cool innovations come. You and I have talked a little bit about live streaming in the past and how that video content is going to help drive engagement and build some of those authenticities. So I'd love to see some of that content kind of come into how we help our customers understand. And influencers is not just people in fancy hats. It could be people building things and explaining how to put up a shed. And that kind of authenticity is what it's going to drive that in a lot of different categories. So I'd love to see some of that for sure. And I suspect the Canadian market's going to get there.
Yeah, I mean, just off of my own little experiment here of doing this podcast, I see my engagement levels going up. I know it takes a commitment to keep producing weekly content, but I do think that retailers need to, maybe the first 10 videos won't get the amount of plays that you would like, but over a period of time, you start to see that engagement and that curating of a community start to build. And I really do believe in the video, I mean, I can see my results already over a month and a half changing, never mind a big brand. And if they put a commitment behind this, there was one thing you were touching on with the content there that, when I have conversations with my team and any of the new teams that I've had in the past, where I try to show them or explain to them the value of content, whether it be a blog, a buying guide, your product content is, I say this to them. So I have so many stupid sayings, but this is one of them. So it might stick with you. Basically, when you throw a party, if you have a party and you invite 50 people over to your party, and then they go into your fridge and there's nothing there, there's no food, there's no beer, there's no wine, that party's over. People are gone, they checked out. So that food, the wine, all of those things are your content. And when you invite through whatever ads, organic, display, when you invite all of these people into your house, your brand, your website, and if you don't have good content there, they're bouncing, they're gone. So I know it's a silly thing to compare it to, but to me, it was just a way to get people to understand. They're right. Like, how many people would sit at a party with no food, no drink? Nobody, they're gone.
Absolutely.
Same thing with our website. It has to be structured properly, easy to navigate, and have the right value of content for the consumer to digest. Otherwise, they're on to the next website.
Yeah, Chris, you're absolutely right. I love your analogy of a party, because essentially that's what it is. I mean, and it's funny because we'll give ad dollars to the ad group, and they'll do television and they'll do radio, and they'll say, go to retailer.ca, right? And whatever the case is. So, which is great, because let's drive this traffic and get people there. But once they're there, to your point, how do we meet the expectations we've set for them, right? We've got great deals. We got, we're the experts on X. Are you demonstrating that, right? And I think that's all part of what that content is, whether it's, rich, descriptions that tell me right to the last bit how this power drill is going to work, or how this, pair of jeans is going to fit me, or, blogs that give me ideas on how to do X. So I think that's all part of the commitment that we have to fulfill as retailers when we bring a customer to the page. So next time they hear that, like, what, I'm not going through that again, because that's not what the experience was. And you avoid what I call e-commerce fails, right? You get this information that tells you X, and you set this expectations, or maybe you put a picture that doesn't give really perspective on how small this thing is. So in my mind, I'm expecting this big poster that's going to go on my wall, and then I get it's an 8x10. So I think those are where you kind of you make a brand promise or a retailer promise or whatever the case is. And you want to meet that by ensuring that experience is the same when your customer comes to the page. And ultimately, that's satisfaction, and that's I'll come back because of what that experience was. And what's even worse is that you get somebody there, there'll be this terrible experience, then they somehow muddle through and get what they need, and then you send them a survey saying, how was your experience? We hope you like. So we've kind of managed some of these pieces, the before and the after and whatever the case is, but I think sometimes that the actual event in itself is not complete. And I think there's a lot of room there to actually improve and work some of that.
Yeah, and the image perspective is so key. Holy cow, that resonated to me. I was starving the other day, and I went through a drive-through, and I get to the drive-through, and the poster's showing me this massive breakfast sandwich or whatever it was, and I get back to my desk, I open my bag, and the thing's the size of a loonie, and I'm like, I needed 10 of them.
Listen, the food industry has a lot to explaining. The food photography industry has a lot to do with that. Yeah, I mean, there's such a disparity in what it is, and I think we don't want to do that to e-com customers, because then we're dealing with returns, we're dealing with having to manage that dissatisfaction, which costs you money, right? Because now you're dealing with that back and forth. You're dealing with having to extend your customer service, because now you have irate, unhappy people, and ultimately that is damaging to, again, you and I start talking about how do you build a brand authenticity to be around for a long time. And that's what it is, because if you damage that, you may get somebody fool me once sort of scenario, but you're not getting that customer again. So you spend more time actually acquiring customers than maintaining and growing the customers you have, which is not a good thing to do.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I'm sitting here thinking, should I explain to our American audience what the loonie is? Or does everyone have that figured out by now? I'll let you Google it.
Absolutely.
Great, Isaac. Hey, so just a couple more questions for you. First, where can people get a hold of you and connect with you? Because you are engaged on LinkedIn, and you always have thoughtful posts and recommendations for people. So I want to make sure that they can connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Myself, as you, Chris, we're very, very active on LinkedIn. So Isaac Wanzam on LinkedIn is very easy to find me for sure. And then, of course, Isaac at Geekspeak Commerce, or just visit geekspeakcommerce.com. Always happy to talk. I'm one of those players or folks in the industry who wants to talk to everybody in the space. I know there's sometimes some resistance that, well, we're competing or whatever the case is. I'm certainly of the belief that there's enough customers and there's so much opportunity here that we can collectively grow and become better, which is why we really contribute a lot as an agency. You've seen we've got a point of purchase, which is our own show, and we'll bring in folks, and Chris, you've been gracious enough to be part of that. So ultimately, that's where you could find me, and certainly I'm open to connect, and let's get the dialogue going and improve each other.
There is one more area to connect with you that I just learned recently and got an invite from you, is on Clubhouse.
Yes.
And
yeah.
I bring that up because I've now participated on maybe 4 or 5 different events on Clubhouse, and
right.
It's a different experience. I feel like I'm talking to myself, because you don't have the video connection there, and you just have this microphone that's flashing every once in a while, and I am enjoying it. I will have to say I'm a big fan of talk radio, and it gives me that very same feeling of a talk radio when you're listening to a good host, and they're going back and forth with their different panel guests. So thank you for introducing that to me. That's been fantastic. What do you think of it? Where do you see Clubhouse being of value to, whether it's an individual for networking or a brand?
Yeah, I think Clubhouse is great, and I think you're going to see forums like that that have come up in the past 12 months continue. I'm probably going to invite you to Twitter Spaces, which is a new one. So Twitter took essentially Clubhouse and they put it on their platform. So if you've got 600 plus followers, you could actually open up a Twitter room the same way that you would on Clubhouse. So I think from an engagement and what's going on in this industry, I think Clubhouse is great, especially in some of those specific venues around marketing or CPG. There's a lot of really, really smart folks out there. We hosted one with you, obviously. We also hosted one with Alibaba.com, who's one of our partners from in some of the content space as well. And it was, here's what we're doing. I find Clubhouse very accessible and frank. Because you had merchants, for example, who were very interested in what Alibaba was doing for North American manufacturers. And in that forum, they could access the director of marketing and strategy at Alibaba and answer very specific questions about where we're going. So it's very intimate, and I think it's a great way to access people without having to go through gatekeepers and get questions and customer service. So if somebody makes themselves available and could answer questions, and I think for brands, that's fantastic. You get on there, you could speak to, here's our direction, here's our vision, and here's what we're doing, and here's we are with this moderator, you take questions. And I think that town hall feel has a very sort of reach out and connect aspect to it that I think is amazing. Clubhouse has hit that. I mean, over the past 8 months, they've grown tremendously. I'm curious to see how that translates on Twitter. I'd love to have conversations there, because I mean, all of a sudden you're opening it to even a wider audience for sure, who's keen in our space about e-com and retail and merchandising, and where's technology is going and where's all this going to fit in, and really have a genuine and authentic exchange, which is something that I'm always glad to be part of.
Well, I'm looking forward to the invite on Twitter. I haven't been on Twitter in a long time. I don't even remember my password probably to get into it, but I will reactivate that and look forward to testing that one out with you. Yeah, I think Clubhouse has a real good spot in the industry. I think from what I've saw and what we've done, I think when you talked about a brand having to build and being authentic, I think it's a great way for, like, let's say my company here at Home Hardware, my company as if I own it, but Home Hardware, and the fact that we have this here's how, and if we can have a discussion with people, maybe it's a pro side of the business and we're talking about power tools and recommendations for building a deck, and you don't need a lot of visual for that, but just to have a product expert on there speaking with an audience about the pros and cons of a Milwaukee versus a DeWalt or whatever, I think it could be quite engaging for customers to be able to use a tool like that and just have an opening dialogue with a retailer. I mean, so many times you're just behind a brand, a logo, and you're not really having that chance to communicate with the experts or their suppliers, and using a format or form like that, I think could be pretty interesting to test and learn from. So I think I'm giving away some information on how I plan on playing around with it, but I've found it pretty intriguing.
No, absolutely. And I think you made an excellent point there, Chris. It's like we kind of see these companies as logos, and Home Hardware is just a logo. But I think truly, in your case as an example, your assets is that know-how, is that expertise, and I think ultimately that's what differentiates and sets you from anybody who's just selling product anywhere. So if you're able to really leverage that, because it's an asset, how do we leverage our people to do to do more and be part of our process? In our show, Point of Purchase, I mean, I've done a few of them, but if you watch the last few ones, it's actually Geekspeak team members that have come in to talk about how to optimize, the point of SEO and so on and so forth. So that's knowledge that's even deeper with them because they're in that every day. So for us as an organization, not to leverage and help that team member grow, because all of a sudden they may have been not capable of speaking in this forum, but then also be able to educate a wider group of of potential customers or customers, I think would be missed.
Yeah, I love how you're growing your associates. One, you're leveraging a micro influencer. Two, you're giving them the confidence to learn and get comfortable with public speaking. I had Lou Pume at Walmart, who was a mentor of mine, and at Walmart on Monday mornings, you would have to go into the auditorium and you would talk about any of the accomplishments you had, your numbers, and the auditorium was literally like 1,000 people sitting there every Monday morning that you would have to present with. And most of the other directors would go and do the speech and represent the whole department. So if it was operations speaking, it was the VP of operations. If it was merchandising, it was the VP of merchandising. Right. What Lou did was said, nope, he's not going to speak. He's going to put one of his managers up and have them go and speak and tell about their numbers and their success and their stories. And I remember 2003, 2004, when I finally got the opportunity to speak. I was butterflies in the stomach. I thought if I mess up, my career's done with. And Lou just kept, and I got up there, I fumbled my words, I fumbled my numbers. It was nerve-wracking. The next week, Chris, go up again. And the next week, Chris, go up again. And eventually it became natural. And then all of a sudden, I now had the courage to go to an e-tail and do public speaking. But I wouldn't have had that courage if Lou didn't give me the opportunity in front of a safe audience, one that was not trying to be judgmental or critical, one that was supportive. And he knew that. I didn't, but he knew that at the time and just gave me that opportunity to grow me into someone that would be able to do public speaking with. Now I still get butterflies beforehand, but
of course,
it's not nearly that apprehension that it was in 2003. And that's all due to this gentleman's vision. And I think, kudos on you. The more that you can give your team exposure to stuff like that, challenge them, put them in uncomfortable situations. They may not realize it at the time, but you're doing them a service by doing that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, you're definitely going to see, because as we said at the top, we've got a really, really sharp team here, and they're so good at what they do. And part of our role when we're in this position of leadership is to do some of that. Let's help people grow their career. And as I said, we want them to leave with better resumes than they came in, and certainly all those are part of that calculus.
Fantastic. Hey, I'm not going to keep you any longer. This has been great. I know people now know how to get a hold of you. You guys are a fantastic partner. The one thing I will have to say, and I'm always speaking from my heart and I wear my emotions on my sleeve in most days, you are one of my best friends in the industry. I truly respect you. I look forward to watching everything that you do. I learn from you so much, Isaac. And there's no better partner in the industry when it comes to, not forget Geekspeak. I'm talking about Isaac, the man behind it. I truly appreciate you. I know when I talk to others in the industry, it's the same dialogue all the time. There's so much love for you in this industry, and I greatly appreciate the fact that you've been a partner of mine for so long.
Awesome. No, Chris, I do appreciate your sentiment. Thank you so much for wearing your emotion on your sleeve. I'm going to express the same. I look forward to us all growing together, because we're still very early in our careers. We're far from putting this down. So let's continue to innovate and just do something fantastic.
Thank you so much, Isaac. We'll chat again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.
Cheers.
You've been listening to Delivering E-commerce. It's our passion to have on leaders and suppliers in e-commerce from around the globe, setting you and your strategy up for the next level. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review, and we'll be back soon. Connect with Chris on LinkedIn at Chris Parsons, on LinkedIn and Spotify at Delivering E-commerce, or on YouTube at Chris Parsons Delivering E-commerce. Till next time, this is Delivering E-commerce.